So good day once again. So welcome to the continuation of our discussion on intercultural communication. So last meeting, I mentioned to you the relationship between culture and communication. And we say that communication is an important aspect in terms of sharing culture. And through communication, we are able to be enculturated. So with that introduction, I will now be leading you on the final part of our discussion for the topic intercultural communication, which is communication as path to cultural understanding. So we say that we have to be more particular of others' culture in order for us to avoid miscommunication. And if miscommunication is caused uh, by problems in terms of cultural understanding, then communication can also be a way or a path to achieve cultural understanding. And with that, let me mention these things again to you. Let me mention this to you again, that cultures are what make countries unique. Each country has different cultural activities and cultural rituals. Culture is more than just material goods, that is, the things the culture uses and produces. It is also the beliefs and values of the people in a certain group. It is a word for people's way of life and their meanings of the way they do things. And with that, we say that culture is really important in order for us. Understanding one's culture is important for us to avoid miscommunication. Then part of cultural understanding is knowing what cultural adjustment is. So for this topic, I will be mentioning to you the different stages of cultural adjustment. So it happens when you visited a particular country and then you will be studying on that particular country. So you grow up from a country which is not the country, which is not the culture where you are comfortable of. So what are those experiences that you might encounter as you go along with the people on that particular country? So the first stage of culture adjustment is people from other culture feel enthusiasm and excitement upon knowing that they will be going to other country. Halos lahat naman 'di ba excited kapag pupunta ka sa ibang bansa. Excited ka na makakita ng iba't ibang tao coming from other nation, or excited ka sumakay ng airplane. Excited ka na paglapag mo din makakita ka ng bagong surroundings. So that's an um, initial feelings ng mga pumupunta sa ibang bansa or pumupunta sa isang lugar na iba yung kulturang kinalakhan mo. So in this stage, the individual is very positive about the culture. Positive in a way na okay yung kulturang ito, okay yung lugar na ito, marami akong matututunan sa lugar na ito. So they are overwhelmed with impressions, finds the culture exotic, kaya siya naging exotic kasi hindi naman yun yung kanyang kinalakhang kultura at iba yun para sa kanya, kaya siya naging exotic, and is fascinated by it and largely passive and doesn't confront the culture. Ibig sabihin, okay sa kanya yung nakikita niya dito. Ayos sa kanya yun. He or she likes it. So yun yung initial na na-encounter ng mga pumubisita sa ibang kultura, ibang culture, ibang society, or ibang community. And after that, yung mga ilang buwan na pag-stay niya doon, that person might notice na when foreigners begin to interact with the culture of the host country, they find the behavior of the people unusual and unpredictable. Bakit? Kasi doon niya na nare-realize na there's something na wrong na hindi, parang nahihirapan na siya to adopt. So, this is the stage when they feel withdrawn and experience loneliness. Kumbaga parang nakikita na nila na ay parang this is not the kind of culture where I am used to. Kasi iba yung kinalakan niya. So doon niya na-realize na there's something wrong with it, na it becomes difficult for that person to really cope with that new culture. So kaya ang pakiramdam niya, parang gusto niyang i-withdraw, gusto niya na parang umalis, may ganong feeling, or nakakaramdam ng loneliness. In the next stage, we call it the re-emergence and adjustment stage. Ano nangyayari dito? So from this stage, they begin to understand more of the behavior of people. So kumbaga rito, nag-ano siya, nag-step back na kailangan niya ng tumingnan or embrace kung ano man yung mga setbacks niya before. So kailangan niya ngayong konting mag-step back para tingnan from a wider perspective yung culture na kung saan siya ngayon. So, dito ay nagkakaroon ng re-emergence. Pag sinabi ng re-emergence, parang he is now or he or she is now trying to immerse himself or herself to the culture. Na parang unti-unti niya nang natatanggap kung ano man yung kanyang natatanggap yung kasalukuyang kultura na expose siya. So, he or she has this tendency na to feel more comfortable living in or encountering the culture, feel isolated and regain this sense of humor. Siguro, dahil teorya dyan is that nare-realize niya na dapat ay i-embrace niya na yung ganong kultura. Okay, may epekto dyan yung mga nakilala niya, nakasalamuhan niya. They are part of that development on part of the cultural adjustment of the person. So, the last stage is achievement enthusiasm. Kung sa una, nagsimula ka na pagiging enthusiastic kasi excited ka, it has to also end with enthusiasm. Kasi, unti-unti mo nang ini-embrace yung kulturang kinagagalawan mo ngayon. So, the individual enjoys being in the culture, functions easily in the culture kasi nakapag-adjust na and prefers certain culture behavior to that of his or own culture and adopt certain behaviors. So, may tendency sila na kung saan ay mas prefer na nila yung kultura na kinalalakan nila ngayon and adopt the way of life ng mga tao doon sa lugar na yun. But there's also concern with, is it solely na dinineglect niya na yung kulturang pinanggalingan niya to embrace the new culture? That's somehow another story to tell. But if in your case, mapapansin niyo kayo lumaki sa Bisaya, kayo ay lumipat sa Maynila, mapapansin niyo na unti-unti habang tumatagal ay parang mas na-enjoy niyo na mag-stay sa, let's say, sa Tagalog region because of the reason na mayroon ka naman nakikilala, mayroon ka naman nakakasalamuha at nakuha mo na yung loob ng mga tao na nakapaligid sa iyo. And then you get used to their way of life and hence resulted to achievement that the adjustment that you have is already considered as achievement, and with that achievement that you have experienced resulted to enthusiasm. You become more excited. And alongside with culture adjustment is a person might encounter culture shock. Diba? The moment you immerse yourself on that particular culture, and then as you go through with that culture, exposing yourself on that culture, little by little, you will notice na parang nako-culture shock ka. So it happens when a certain culture is challenged by another way of thinking or doing something, which is part of the process of cultural adaptation. It is natural that someone might encounter culture shock. Kasi nga, that's not the kind of culture where you grow up. That's not the kind of culture where you are exposed to. Hence, culture shock is very much apparent among those who are transferring from one culture to another. More often, the cultural adjustment is accompanied with culture shock, just like what I said. So there are different symptoms of culture shock. So these are homesickness, namimiss ka, boredom, lethargy, withdrawal and irritability, parang gusto mo lang umuwi, ayaw mo na rito. Hostility toward local people, parang ayaw mo na yung mga taong nakakasalamuha mo, parang hostile na yung the way you interact with them. Next, irrational anger, parang bigla ka nalang magagalit, bigla ka nalang mahiyamat, wala namang rason. And excessive sleeping because bored ka. You don't want to go out. Wala kang means to to cope up with your boredom. Hence, you resorted to excessive sleeping. And these are the symptoms of culture shock. So there are also stages of culture shock. So the first stage is called the honeymoon stage. Okay, ano to? So foreigners still find everything to be new and exciting. The emotion experience are typically excitement, stimulation, and curiosity, and hence the behavior in this stage are also guided by curiosity, interest, and self-assurance. The honeymoon stage is said to last for approximately 3 months and is characterized by great pleasure in discovering and mastering new things. Nandiyan na yung nag-explore kayo muna, kasi nga excited ka. Diba? Kapag honeymoon, talaga namang others will be excited. So, in that honeymoon period, in terms of culture shock, similar dun sa cultural adjustment, diba? Nandun yung feeling of being excited to meet others. And then later on, as you go through with exposing yourself or immersing yourself from the new environment, from the new culture, dumarating ka ngayon sa point na frustration or disintegration. Bakit? Kasi foreigners may withdraw into themselves thinking it is my fault, I am unable to adapt here. So, hindi siya makapag-adapt doon. So, parang hindi siya makapag-adjust doon sa bagong kultura na kung saan siya exposed. Kaya meron sense of withdrawal. Kaya meron sense of disintegration. Ibig sabihin, ayaw nang i-associate yung sarili niya rito, nag-disintegrate na siya at gusto niya nang i-withdraw or umalis na lang siya sa lugar na yun. So a sense of confusion and disorientation with differences between home and host culture become very noticeable. And an acute sense of profound loss and disorientation regarding what can be expected of others and what others expect of them may be experienced. Kasi nga, iba yung kinalakhan mong kultura at bago yung kulturang kinalalakhan mo, since nandun ka sa bagong kultura na dapat mong immerse yung sarili mo, people will have the same expectation. So in a certain society wherein people are following this set of norms, what these people are expecting from you. Sumunod ka sa kung ano yung sinusunod nilang kultura. Hindi yung sila yung mag-a-adjust sa'yo. Diba? Kasi ikaw na nga, ikaw tong pumunta doon ikaw yung bumisita doon, ikaw yung lumipat doon. So, do not expect them na to always adjust to you. It should be you who will be adjusted to them. Okay? So due to their self-perception, they often believe themselves to be at fault and are unlikely to seek outside help. Because nga, hindi sila, nahihirapan sila mag-adapt. So, ang biniblame nila yung sarili nila. Okay? And the next stage is called doldrums. Ano itong doldrums? In which foreigners start to evaluate the other culture. Ito na yung unti-unti niya tinitingnan na nare-realize nyo na, okay, parang there's something that I need to understand, something that I really need to know, that it's not always be the same thing every day that nararamdaman ko yung parang disintegrated ako sa kanila. I would like to withdraw myself from this particular culture. So hence, on this stage, after examining the host culture, it is a good idea to decide what to change and what to keep and what to throw out altogether. So, may tendency na itong kulturang kinalakan ng isang tao can be retained because it's useful, or could be there's some things na dapat siyang i-alter or to change totally. So, use of defense mechanisms such as keeping to themselves or concentrating only on academics, pertaining to students kasi. Concentrating on other things to portray personal difficulties and limit relationships to fellow nations becomes apparent. Okay? So, with that, kapag na-realize niya yung sinabi natin kanina na personal difficulties and limit relationship to fellow nationals becomes apparent, yung parang nadi-disintegrate niya na yung sarili niya, although nare-realize niya na ano ba dapat yung, saan ako dapat mag-adjust, ano yung mali ko, ano yung dapat na kailangan kong i-correct para ma-cope up with ko sa kanila. Pero little by little, na ang nagiging focus mo ngayon is on other things that might lead to personal difficulties, hence resulting to limiting your relationship with fellow nationals. And with that, nagkakaroon tayo ng autonomy stage, autonomous, like, solo ka na. So, parang you can stand alone na. despite all those setbacks that you have previously from adjusting, parang you're trying to regain yourself. So this stage is marked by increased sensitivity in understanding toward the host culture. So right after ba magkaroon ng problems or encounters with the culture, with the host culture we are exposed to, you're now moving forward by understanding deeper of the kind of the host culture. So again, this is marked by increased sensitivity and understanding toward the host culture. So the self-blame of the second stage and the hostility of the third stage, take note of that. Self-blame, nagsa-self-blame ka na sa second stage at yung hostility mo on the third stage are now in a position to build a new perspective on your former identity and the new host culture. So the emotion in this stage lean towards self-assurance, more relaxed attitude, increased warmth in one's relationship to others, and the ability to empathic caring. So matapos mong i-disintegrate yung sarili mo, matapos mong ma-realize yung something that you have to recognize on the host culture, something that would really help you to really cope up with the new environment that you have, you're now starting to lean towards on making more relaxed on that culture, making yourselves more at home on that particular culture. So little by little, as you go through with that, you're now experiencing the process of adaptation. So what is the process of adaptation? So this is the final stage. So you will experience increased self and cultural awareness that enables the individuals to undergo further life transitions and to discover additional ways to explore human diversity. So if you're just going to encapsulate everything, nagsimula ka sa, again, cultural adjustment comes along with culture shock. Because part of culture adjustment is that you will be experiencing some culture shock. And you will see that there is some similarities as to how these two stages are explained. Okay, so in culture shock, you begin from excited, and then at the middle part, you become more of questioning, why am I here? What am I doing here? And then the succeeding part, you're now realizing your purpose of being there, your purpose of understanding the culture. And then later on, you will now be totally embracing that kind of culture. Same thing with what you do during the cultural adjustment. So again, culture shock and culture adjustment, they come hand in hand. So just to avoid confusion on the stages of these two. So there are factors that affect cultural adjustment. So first is the extent of social interactions with host nationals. So the more that you are exposed to that host national, the more that will become easier for you to understand their culture, to know their culture, to understand the way of life of the people. On the other hand, the lesser that you expose yourself to them, the lesser that it will be difficult for you to adjust, and the more that it will be difficult for you to adjust, the more that culture shock will be sustained. So interaction with other nationals is very important in order for you to really understand. Kasi nagkakaroon ka na ng circle of friends, nagkakaroon ka na ng mga peers mo doon na kung saan they are willing to share to share their culture to you, and you're very much willing to somehow share your culture to others, and with that it results to cultural sensitivity that leads to cultural understanding. And attitudes of the individuals towards home and host culture also matter. If you are passive, if you are let's say boxed na hindi mo gusto yung culture na to, then more likely it will be impossible for you to adjust. And finally, the home culture patterns. So when we talk of home culture patterns, it is something to do with the way of life that your home culture is observed, wherein that pattern is not observed on the current culture where you are exposed to. So that would be all for the final discussion of intercultural communication. So thank you very much.